All right, guys, we are live. This is episode 20 of the Deconstruction Podcast, brought to you by Jobtable, the simplest way to grow and manage your construction company. I'm going to kick it off here with a review from our buddy Chris. Chris is a tile and renovations contractor from Toronto. I've been using Jobtable for our project management needs and couldn't be happier with the results. The platform is intuitive and easy to use, making task assignment and progress tracking a breeze. The collaboration tools have significantly improved our team's productivity, and the reporting features provide valuable insights. Overall, Jobtable has streamlined our workflow and enhanced our efficiency. Highly recommend. Thank you, Chris, for that review.
Shout out to Chris.
All right, so we have a special guest today. We got Matteo, the founder and CEO of UBild. Matteo, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Likewise, thank you guys for having me.
No problem.
It's exciting. I've been watching your episodes, and it's cool to now be on the other side.
Awesome. So I guess kick things off, if you don't mind. Just introduce yourself. What you do and what UBild does for the construction industry.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll kick it off about myself a little bit. So I was born and raised in Toronto in Etobicoke. I worked in the trades literally since I was a kid. Like I was always knocking on people's doors, doing odd jobs for them around their houses. And that was really like kind of the start of what UBild has become now. And my family wasn't in construction. It was just a passion that I had. I loved working with my hands. I loved being entrepreneurial. And so I branded myself as like odd job Matt. So I would go door to door doing jobs for people. And then that slowly started to evolve. I got more and more busy doing, these small scopes around people's homes. And I turned that into a home service marketplace. And so started connecting homeowners with contractors of, all different sizes for various different scopes. And that was my first startup, and grew that, and it was getting very busy, built technology around it. And then COVID hit. And something that I learned through that experience of building the home service marketplace was a lot of these contractors that I was connecting the homeowners with were understaffed. So they just couldn't meet project demands. I was bringing them so much work and they were at capacity. And so then naturally I started to try to solve that problem for them. And when I started to supply labor and skilled trades to the contractors, my mind opened up and I realized like, wow, this is a huge problem. The labor shortage, skilled labor shortage in this industry is crippling these contractors. They can't grow. And it was COVID hit, and I had this new knowledge of what contractors really needed. And that was what inspired me to kind of scale down that business or pivot. I don't know to me, it's one continuous thread, but then I launched UBild, and kind of the rest is history. Now what UBild is, it's an AI powered platform for construction companies to hire staff for both temporary and full-time positions. So we work with hundreds of builders now and different contractors across the GTA. Also in the US now, we're live in Philadelphia, Nevada, and we're moving into Vegas. So it's been an exciting journey. We're just at day one. It always feels like day one. But yeah, that's kind of how we started, what we're doing.
Oh, that's great. Last time we spoke, was the US, is that recent, entering the US?
Yeah. So that's been a real concerted effort of mine over the past couple months, is getting US traction, showing that the platform is not just a GTA thing, and really kind of turning our service business of supplying labor and doing this kind of recruiting and productizing it in a way that customers can use just the software to assist with their hiring needs. So that's a big jump in a lot of ways, the product, our positioning, and the use case.
Oh, that's awesome. So if you're a contractor, you can like sign up to UBild, post a job, and you're gonna through AI connect them with the right worker, and then it's up to the contractor to connect with that worker, or what do the into the weeds look like?
Yeah, so into the weeds. So there's two different types of jobs you can create on UBild. One is a short-term job, so that's like a temporary labor staffing, where you would essentially post the job and the job will get filled. So what the AI will do is it'll analyze the job post, then it'll source our database of workers, and it'll invite the top 1% of workers within the database that match that job and the requirements. And then they can fill that role. And for those short-term jobs, the workers clock in and clock out through UBild. That automatically generates an invoice and sent to the customer. And that covers their WSIB, their liability insurance, kind of everything included in that. So that's for the short-term jobs. And on the long-term, it's a little bit more, the full-time jobs are a little bit more robust, where an employer will create a job and then we will repost that job through UBild to multiple different job boards and pull in, hundreds of potential applicants for that job. And our AI will analyze all the profiles and the resumes and basically shortlist the best workers for the job. The workers then go through an AI skill assessment for us to then shortlist once again. And then we do an interview with the top 5 people and present those choices to the customer.
Okay, so you're actually part of the hiring process as well. Like you're interviewing them as well for the contractor.
Yeah, exactly. We do have that human layer because something that we've learned in this industry is you can't productize everything. Tech isn't.
Yeah.
You don't want to replace humans with technology. We want to augment them and help make them more efficient. And that's what we realize is builders don't want another piece of software for their stack, right? Builders want an outcome. They want outcome as a service, not necessarily software as a service. I know Jobtable serves that function well, but for something like hiring, like people want to pay if you get the job done for them. And so we've embraced that and we have a human element to it still.
So out of curiosity, when it comes to the interview process where you're actually involved, how do you technically, right? Like if you're speaking to an electrician, how do you go about asking like very technical questions, or do you even get that far into it?
So that's where we leave the skill assessments to the AI, because no individual human could have that depth of knowledge across every trade type.
Yeah, which is why I was asking, right? Yeah.
Exactly, but the AI knows all of it. So it can ask these questions and pull that information. And when it gets to the human interview, it's exactly that. It's a human interaction. It's understanding the person's nuances and things that drive them, beyond just their skills. What's their personality? Do they have a family? Are they looking to grow in the company? Things that AI can't pick up on as effectively.
Yeah. Yeah, you might even get a feeling about somebody, like a negative or a positive feeling, right? Just talking to somebody. So,
and it's also, I would assume it's also like vetting that once the AI has filtered through basically those list of questions that you're kind of just double checking, right? Like that's the human aspect, right? Are you exactly how you've answered the questions, right? Do you fit that profile that you've put on and has gone through the AI? I'm assuming, right? Because in the end of it too, if somebody is using UBild, it would be a reflection of your company as well, right? On the type of candidates that you're putting forward, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why we have that human factor is, that feeling. And that's the idea, right? It's like when you're hiring, if you post on Indeed, you get like hundreds of applicants. And the problem is there's some good applicants in there that would be a great match for the job. But actually finding them and sifting through the resumes is just such a hassle. And so our whole concept is like we find the needle in the haystack for you. So you don't have to do all that legwork. And you can fill a role faster that way. And you're not just filling the role with the first decent hire you find, you're objectively hiring the best possible person
that's out there. Yeah. No, and you know what? In all fairness, we get so many resumes, and we've been through the Indeed as well, and I tell you, like I want to say out of 30 resumes, you might have one potential, right? And what I mean by potential, it's like, well, we still need to go through that vetting process, right? Everybody else, we'll put one for like a licensed plumber and we'll go through 20 of them, and 19 are not even licensed. So it's like, but how are we paying for this? How are we paying for this applicant coming through when they haven't even met the top priority, which is you need to be a licensed plumber, right? So truthfully, Matt, like what you're saying, it's yeah, I think you're onto something, and I by the sounds of it, it's very intriguing, and I can see a lot of companies actually wanting to use that because, like you said, like the amount of time, like we talk about it a lot on this podcast, time is money, and even when we're hiring, right, there's a huge vetting process to go through all these resumes, and then the interviews and guys that we've interviewed, 90% of the stuff that we require they don't even meet, and then now they're getting back to us, hey, did you guys make a decision? And it's kind of like, well, man, 90% of the box you didn't even check, right? So I can definitely see this because, again, if time is money, I'd rather spend a lot less time sifting through 50, 100 resumes, trying to, getting back to what you said, like trying to find that needle in the haystack, right? So yeah, that sounds very intriguing.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Time is money, and the cost of hiring is not just the time you put in and the amount you spend on the ads or recruiting service or whatever. The cost of your hiring is everything that hire does on your job site, that they contribute to your company or detract from your company. You make a bad hire, it costs you a lot more than just the $100 or $200 on Indeed. It costs you potentially tens of thousands of dollars in mistakes, missed sales, damaged reputation. There's these things. And on the flip side, a good hire can completely transform your business and take you to the next level. And so that's what we're trying to do is empower contractors. Contractors work way too hard to hit bottlenecks in their business because they can't find people. I think that's just it's just a solvable problem for them.
So we're the guys that are still currently using Indeed. Like I actually just interviewed a bunch of guys yesterday and hired a guy from Indeed, but the whole process it took about a week, right? Like you said, to sift through all the resumes, make the preliminary phone calls, weed out the bad ones, narrow it down to 4 or 5 guys, call them in for interviews, and then finally make my choice. One thing I did notice, and I want to ask you, is what's the turnaround from you posting a job to you having applicants presented in front of you? How long is that process? Because I find with Indeed, if I'm not contacting those people within 24 hours, they're already off the market.
Yeah. Well, you can use our database search and you can have applicants within 10 seconds, right? You can do the search. You can say, I'm looking for a licensed plumber, residential plumber in Toronto. It'll immediately show you results and you can invite them to the job. So in terms of seeing matches, it's immediate. Actually when you've invited them to the job and created the job, you'll get qualified applicants within 24 hours. You're gonna have a list of people. The longer you give for more and more applicants to come, you're inherently increasing the quality of the top applicant. Because as you increase the sample pool, you're gonna find more people and thus find the best person from there. So yeah, it's a very fast turnaround, and you don't have to spend a week doing it. You can spend that week driving more sales and let UBild work in the background.
Yeah.
What would you say is the biggest pain point that UBild solves? Is it the time it takes to hire, the interview process, the vetting, or is it the quality of the hire?
To me, it's the quality of the hire that you're going to find. That's the most important thing. But the software that we built, it also solves the time and the monetary, not as much the monetary, but the time investment that you put into it. It streamlines the entire thing. So it's really the time and quality. The cost, you pay for what you get. UBuild's not a cheap service. It's not made for, people that aren't prepared to invest in a new hire. But for the people that, that do fit within kind of our target customer base, it's godsend for them.
So just quickly on that, on the pricing, just for our listeners and even for myself to understand, because like Charlie said, we just went through the whole Indeed market. So like I know, like our company, we're hit all the time with recruiters, right? And basically the fees that the recruiters want, I find are like astronomical, right? Because a lot of times I get recruiting in like, kind of corporate roles and stuff like that, where they're looking for like 4 to 6 month salary kind of like payment, right? So if you're paying somebody $100,000 a year, and they find you that applicant, like the best applicant for that position, they're typically looking for between 30 and 50 grand, right, to fill that role. Which, like in construction, I remember with these people that were coming to talk to us, it's like, yeah, but we're not salary based, right? Like how are you going to find me somebody and tell me you want 6 months of their salary when, number one, are they going to even last 6 months, right? So if I pay you 6 months, are they going to last the 6 months? Number two, again, depending on how many hours the guy works, depending on how good he is, how long he stays, that all factors into it. So, not to get into like too much of the pricing, but in terms of like an actual recruiting company compared to UBild, like is that cost like obviously significantly lower? Just because like, you're using the AI and everything like that. And it seems like you guys have like fast turnaround, like you said, within 24 hours. Is it by the hire? Is it by the wage? Is it by the industry? Like how does that work, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So like I mentioned, in terms of the pricing, there's two different jobs you can post through UBild. So for the short-term temporary jobs, the contractor will pay the workers through UBild's payment processor. And so we charge a service fee for that. That's anywhere from like 15 to 25%, depending on your volume with us. So it'll be the worker's hourly rate plus our service fee. That's for the short-term jobs. But when you're doing a full-time hire and we're doing that process for you, what we do, unlike recruiting firms charge you anywhere from, like you said, 30%, 25 to 35% of the annual salary. And they typically give a guarantee of like 3 months for that role, right? They'll replace that role for you within whatever, 3 or 6 months or something like that. And at UBild, for us to manage the recruiting process, it's between 5 to 10% of that worker's annualized wage. So whether that's hourly or we come up with a quote for you. But what we do is we give you a 12-month guarantee for that role. So we don't just help you hire that for that position, but we'll keep that position filled for you for a 12-month contract.
Okay.
So
that way if it doesn't work out with the first guy, you'll replace him with someone else, I'm assuming.
Exactly. Yeah. And we'll continue that process. That's how we're currently operating, is those service fees. What we're looking into, and we've been experimenting a bit, is with like subscription pricing. So actually, shifting it away from like our white glove service where you can pay the service, but actually just use the software, like I mentioned, on a subscription basis for you to do it yourself. So you might not want to pay that recruiting fee. You might just want to use the software to streamline you. And so that's what we're coming out with next.
Yeah, that's awesome. Nice. Sounds really good.
Nice. So shifting the conversation a bit. So, we, and like Johny and Charlie, you guys like firsthand experience with this. Me speaking to now like thousands of contractors, one of the biggest problems everyone I seem to speak to is hiring the right people. So like overall in the industry, like from your perspective, where do you think this problem stems from? Do you think it's a lack of supply, or it's just like the demand is too high?
See, that question, where does this problem stem from, to me goes back to like the beginning of humanity. I know it's a little bit esoteric, but like stay with me for a sec. It's like you look back at the ancient Egyptians. They were able to build these obelisks and pyramids with dead precision, the most skilled craftsmen you can imagine, and we still don't know how they did it. You look at the Mayans, You look at all these different ancient civilizations that were craftsmen, at heart. They knew how to do these things. And you slowly fast forward through time, and with the advent of the steam engine, through the Industrial Revolution, people that those skilled artisans became less relevant, and what became more relevant was having kind of like unskilled labor that could man machines. And so I think that there's like this much longer narrative about the skilled labor crisis than is just this immediate, issue right now. I think it's like this slow downfall of craftsmanship through time. And even if you look back, in the past like 50 years, the Saturn V rocket, they can't make that engine again. They can't figure out and they had no AutoCAD at the time. There's all these skilled people that knew how to do things that now people just can't do. And so there's this very gradual downfall in skilled labor. And now it's come to that point where, and obviously this bleeds out from everything, but construction specifically, people don't know how to do things anymore. Everyone's been working online. Everybody's, jobs have shifted from, blue collar labor jobs to, everything else you see in our economy today. And now we're in a position where people haven't been trained over the past, 25 years, and everyone's starting to retire, and it's becoming a huge issue. Now it's hard, even 20, 30 years ago, finding skilled labor wasn't hard. Even my dad's generation, on a construction site, if you needed labor, you could easily fill jobs. Now it's much more difficult to find skilled people.
So with that concept in mind now, if you look out 10, 20 years now with AI, what does that look like for skilled workers 10 years from now? Like, are they just going to be obsolete? Like, are they going to exist anymore?
I mean, this is, I can't predict the future, but it's interesting. We'll see what happens. But with the trajectory of AI and robotics, it's a real question. I think that you'll always need people to build things. You can't have AI and robots do everything. But I do see the role of skilled labor transforming dramatically. But that said, it's more so like, okay, well, how do we retain the craftsmanship, right, that we talked about through history? It's like, that's what, to me, is the most important thing, because our built world defines our, where we're at in humanity and who we really are. You see it in our structures. And so the way I see it is like UBild's role right now, I see is, first of all, is helping companies find the very little skilled labor that is out there. And so it's organizing the skilled data of the industry. That's what we're trying to do right now, is collect a massive database of skilled data. And then phase 2 is, okay, now that we've got all these data points, how can we meaningfully leverage this data to help people move forward and gain new skills and fill critical gaps in the workforce? And rather than AI replacing trades, AI is helping to train tradespeople, is helping to move the industry forward and bring back that craftsmanship by identifying these gaps, and helping train people at the end of the day and solve the skilled labor crisis.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you say that, because we've even talked about that on the podcast as well. I'm kind of like in between with AI and these robotics, and then the construction industry, where it's like, yeah, how many guys now, getting back to like these ancient civilizations, even go back to the early 1900s, late 1800s, mid 1800s, right? And you go to these buildings, right, like in Europe, right, and you see these buildings that, like, the pillars, like, they're carved, like hand carved. They have figures on them, and you look at it today, and people can't even brick a house properly. You know what I mean? Like, you find flaws in like just like a subdivision, cookie cutter brick home, right? So like you said, like it's very true. Like I like that model where it's like, we're trying to preserve the skill that's still out there, right? And you guys are collecting that data and trying to give it across to the companies that are looking to fill the gaps. I think honestly, man, like that's a great model, man. Like tip my cap to you for that, because it's very true. Like there's a big gap in this market where everybody says that they can do everything until you put them to the test, you know? And then that's where you see, like, I remember coming up through the trade, and, you know, there was guys that didn't have a license still, right? Just because, you know, the CFQs and stuff, they're you know, 80-90% of the whole CFQ has nothing to do with whether you're becoming a plumber, an electrician, HVAC, you know, elevator mechanic, whatever it is. So they failed their CFQ so many times, but they're some of the most skillful tradesmen I've worked beside, right? Like the old Italians, the old Portuguese, like, man, you can't teach that, right? Like you said, everybody just wants to sit back and just say, well, I've done 5 years. Yeah, but you've done 5 years of what? You know what I mean? You've done 7 years of what? What have you done? You know, show me where your skill and your craft have really separated you from the rest of the workforce, right? Where I feel like 5 years now doesn't really, like back in the day, you used to tell me, you know, yeah, I've done plumbing for 5-6 years. It's like, all right, this guy knows his shit. Where nowadays, I'm still very skeptical, right, on what that person can actually do, because it's like, you know, that was a really good picture you painted. It's like, go back to the ancient civilizations and to now. We don't even know how they did it. You know, one of the conversations we had on this podcast, I remember walking into a church in Portugal, and the whole church is like cladded in gold, and it's all hand carved, right? And it's like, can you imagine trying to construct that today? No, like you couldn't even find. I guarantee you couldn't even find me. Like, you know, obviously a project like that would take thousands of skilled like tradesmen, right? I guarantee you couldn't even find me 50, you know, to fill that role, because they just don't exist, right? And getting back to your point, like, go back to the ancient Egyptians. We're in 2025. We still don't know how they did it. Aren't we supposed to progress?
How they organized the labor to do it. That's what blows my mind, is no software, nothing. And these cathedrals and monasteries and these temples were built just like, you can't wrap your head around it. And today we have all these tools at our disposal, but are we any further forward? You know, that's what I you know, it kind of haunts me sometimes. I'm like, what direction is humanity heading if people can't do stuff anymore? And, you know, what I realized from that is, like, innovation doesn't just happen, right? You guys know this. You guys are solving a key thing for the industry. It doesn't just happen. It takes people that say, okay, we're going to solve this thing for the world. You know, this problem is bigger than any of us. We're going to solve it. And we're going to try to, you know, do everything we can to change the trajectory of history just a bit. And if we can do that, and if we all put our minds together to solve these problems for the industry, and we think as a collective and not just as an individual, and how can I make the most money off this job? How can I, you know, just scrap through? It's like, how can I contribute to something greater than myself? How can, you know, because construction, it's teamwork. It's all collaboration, it's interdependence. And so I think the biggest thing is the industry rallying behind a cohesive vision for the future, right? And a future of the industry as a whole, the whole community. I think that's what's lacking, is this, like, people don't care as much anymore. And I think that there's something there. It's not just the technical skills. It's like the feeling in people's hearts when they build, that falling in love with the craft of construction again.
Standing back and looking at the building, right? Like I think Charlie said this before, where it's like, walk downtown Toronto. Show me one building that blows you away. It's all, like, sure, they're massive towers, but where's the architecture to them? You see what I'm saying? Like, it's a concrete jungle. That's all it is. And when people say, well, you know, we've moved away from stonework. Well, no, because the ancient Romans, they invented basically, you know, concrete, right? How were they still able to build some of the most beautiful structures, right? And you go downtown, right? Toronto, which is like a metropolis, right? But, like, you go down there and it's like, you look around and it's like, there's nothing wowing about this building. It's glass. Cool, right? Where's the craftsmanship, right? I think the craftsmanship truly came more in the engineering feat right? To allow this building to erect, 70, 80, 90 stories in the air. Like, okay, that is a craft on its own, right? Through the, the AutoCAD programs and, making sure load points and everything like that. But the actual architecture of it, the actual skill it takes to, lay those blocks or carve this nice corner or this nice archway or whatever, it's gone. You know what I mean? And you don't find many guys that can still do that. And unfortunately, you're right too, what you said earlier, Matt. It's like that's like the older generation, right? And they're not teaching this skill going down like generation to generation. So eventually, the question is, are we progressing as a society in skill inside the trade in construction, right? And this is where sometimes, like me and Kosta, we had like kind of like a back and forth on, is AI going to be better or worse, right? For at least the construction industry. Like definitely in your model in the UBild for data points and finding the skilled workers, 100,000,000%, brilliant idea, right? But for the actual like skill side, right? Is it going to help it? Is it going to help humanity, or is it going to make us lazier?
So, Matteo, I think your company is going to find a lot of success because number one, there's definitely no shortage of applicants, right? Like I see it all the time. They're like, the resumes will always come in piles and in droves. But like you said, the lack of skill has been diminishing over the years. So in 5 years, in my opinion, it's only going to get worse. In 10 years, terrible. 20, 30 years, detrimental, right? It might even be non-existent. So you able to sift through all the garbage and find a shiny diamond is crucial to some employers, especially like myself. Like I need that, right? Like I need to find the skilled workers because we're constantly growing, right? I think a big problem too is if you look at like Johny was talking about the old Italians and Portuguese, right? Who, they came over here with nothing but the lint in their pocket and they became masons, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, whatever. It was very important for them to learn their craft, and they took it very seriously and they took pride in it, and they were able to buy homes, provide for their families, and they found a lot of success in this country. I think a big reason why you've seen this drop off too is because we're at a time now that we're very comfortable, right? I think we can all admit that. I mean, I can speak for, me and Johny and Kosta. We kind of grew up in not so easy, right? Like it was still a bit rough. But if you look at most people today, they are very comfortable. We're all driving in cars. We complain about the most ridiculous stuff. If your AC breaks down, it's the end of the world. We're to the point that we're Ubering Starbucks to our office because we don't even want to go for a drive and wait in line to get it, right? So we're very privileged. So I think with that will come a big rise in, like some of it is laziness, just being complacent, just not caring because you just don't have the drive. It's not a necessity. I don't have to go out and learn a skill, and it's not going to be life or death if I don't. I'll figure something else out. I can go over here, I can fuck around there, whatever the case may be. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because, to Johnny's point, is where do you draw the line in the sand for the AI, right? Obviously, we all are owners of tech companies, right? So we see the value in it, and we see how much it could help people. But also, we talk about this all the time, just the iPhone. The amount of drop off in humans in general since the iPhone has come out, right, is exponential. So you might say, okay, well, look, with AI and iPhones and all this stuff, GPS mapping, whatever it may be, we've gone, from here to here, right? A huge climb. But humans on the street barely say hello to each other. They don't even acknowledge that that you've walked across somebody. There could be somebody starving in the street or somebody gets hurt, and most people will turn a blind eye to it because they're so disconnected as humans, right? So I'm actually curious to get your take on this, right? Being a founder of a tech company, right? Especially with AI, like how do you feel about that? Like, is there a line in the sand? Do we just kind of push forward as far as we can, and whatever the outcome, whatever mess we leave behind us is the mess we leave behind us? Or do we have to be conscious and aware and careful about how fast and how far we push this?
Yeah, it's a very interesting take, and it makes sense, right? Like you said, in a time where humans are the most connected that we've ever been, we're also the most disconnected.
Absolutely.
And disconnected from who we really are, from each other. Like there's a whole nother realm to this. But in terms of like where you draw the line, I think you look at AI as like, it is a tool like any other tool. And how you use it is gonna be the outcome of it. And so I think that like the key thing in construction with it is like I said, AI and technology to augment humans, to help as an extension, of them, to do busy work so that we can focus on the things that matter. And to me, the things that matter are the human to human connection, right? I don't want to create more technology for you. I want to solve a problem with technology in the background, right? I want it to sift through millions of data points to help find the right worker for the right job that can create a match to help both parties move forward in a good way. But what I don't want is for it to become, something that automates everything, where you're not talking to a human and you're never interacting with a human because you're always dealing with the AI. I think that's not the right approach. Because like you said, like there needs to be like, people are lazy nowadays, people don't want to do things, and people are disconnected from each other. So I think there's a much bigger problem in society and young people today that I think needs to be solved for, which is like, teaching them that grit and finding that passion, right? And them not, figuring out, what they love to do and to focus on it. And AI isn't really going to help you do that. You only do that by interacting with other humans.
Charlie, to your point about, and I know we have this debate all the time about like, the line in the sand and like, where does it stop? Like my view with AI is this is just an unstoppable force of innovation. Like the genie is out of the bottle. There's no turning back. Like I don't think there is a line in the sand at this point. Like I really can't see like how it stops. You know what I mean? Like who draws that line? Like how does that even
Yeah, no,
happen?
you're
Like,
right.
it's
Yeah,
out.
there's definitely not any kind of like authority that's going to stop it at this point, right? Like it's out there, like you said, the genie's out of the bottle. So I think at the end of the day, it comes down to us as people who still care about the human connection to be very conscious about it. And if you have children, like we all do, is to
Yeah.
pass that knowledge down to them and show them the importance of human connection, right?
Yeah.
That's really all we can bank on.
Check
Definitely.
this out here. Sorry, John, just quickly here, just coming back to something you mentioned, Matteo. So I just quickly searched here. In here, it's like a live theory that I'm kind of like just thinking about in my head, like right now. So in 2007, there was, this is in Canada, so 785,000 construction employees in 2007. And by 2002, that basically doubled to 1.69 million. So when I see this tells me that clearly the quantity of workers is exponentially increasing, right? It's doubled in 15 years and it probably will double again, right? But is that because you need more people to do like less work because like the skill's not there, you just need more people to do things like just because it's very inefficient, like there's lack of skill? You know what I mean? Or is the number increasing because of just the lack of skill? Like you need more people that are unqualified to do the same thing that maybe half the number of people could do like 100 years ago.
I don't
Is
think
that
I
why
don't
the number's
No,
increasing?
I don't
I
think.
don't think you can, I can't I don't think you can just point to one thing and say that's what it is, like lack of skill, for example. If you look at the city of Toronto, it's unrecognizable from 25 years ago, right? So I mean, so that tells you that there's a lot of work that has gone into the city, the amount of condos, buildings that have gone up, right? And this is one city of many. So to your point, I definitely think skill is a huge component of that. There's definitely a factor because I see it. Like I used to be a union plumber, and the company I worked at, were all these old Italian guys, right? And all the apprentices, and we all took our jobs very, very seriously. And there was no like fat in the company on that steak, man. It was we ran very lean, very efficient. But now fast forward, I opened up iPlum with Johny, and then I still talk to some of the guys that are in the union, and they say what we used to do as a company with 25 guys, they now need 50, 60 guys, right? So to your point, you hit the nail on the head. So there's definitely a lot of that going on, right? Especially in unions where a licensed plumber, let's say, is making $60 an hour or whatever it is. He's making the same wage. A highly skilled guy is making the same wage as a guy that's just all he's ever done is install toilets his entire career, and he got stuck doing that. He's making the same wage. There's no reward for being a more skilled tradesman, especially if you're in the union, which I always thought was a big problem, right? I think you should be rewarded for your dedication, your drive, and your skill. So that's kind of gone out the window. So I think, again, there's a lot of things that factor into this, but you definitely can't just point at one thing.
Yeah, you got to also take into account too that, in the early 2000s, sure, you had subdivisions, but not like, the way the buildings are going up, the way the subdivisions were going up, you saw a subdivision with 100 homes, and then all of a sudden you started seeing subdivisions with 500 homes, right? And we touched base on this in the last podcast as well. And then it was like the timelines, right? Just started getting shorter and shorter and shorter. It's like, hey, we built 100 over there in 2 years. Now we got to build 300 in 2 years. You know what I mean? So I think obviously like when you look back, getting back to what Matteo was talking about, like the skilled tradesmen, once upon a time, they used to build something. Yes, there still was a timeline associated with it, but there was more of a passion. There was more of a, when you were done, you looked at it and it was like, look at this fucking building. You know what I mean? Like, look at what we put up, right? Ask me any of the buildings that we put up. Like, there's nothing that wows me. You know what I mean? It's just like, all right, like on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one, So I think that has to do with that as well. And also, too, if you go just based on those statistics, from 2003 to 2021, even like the Canadian population and in Toronto as well, like we've grown, right? So obviously, if you grow, you need more housing, you need more buildings, you need, things change, like Charlie said, Toronto's unrecognizable from 25 years ago, which means you're going to need an influx of bodies, right, in order to build this stuff.
Yeah. So this kind of sounds like this is just like a natural, like economic evolution where like things are just moving way faster. There's way more going on. So you can't, there's not enough like A and B players on the field to keep up with all the buildings. So now you need to hire like the C and D players just to get it going.
Just to keep up with the demand. Yeah, just to keep up with the demand. But back to what Matteo was saying as well, is that the right way? Because we're putting up these buildings that are supposed to be standing up there now for 100, 150, 200, 250 years. Is that building that we put up that has literally no, let's just say like design skill to it, is that something we want to be looking at in our city, right?
I think it comes down to, yeah, like you said, Johny, it's because we're trying to keep up with development needs. And so we're just throwing bodies at jobs to get them done. And I think what it really comes down to is the reason why we build now is very different than the reason why we used to build. Now people are trying to build because everyone's trying to make money, but as much money as possible. It's all about them. We're very disconnected, like we were talking about. But you look back and people were building from much different perspective. It reminds me of this parable. You guys might have heard it. A guy's walking by three laborers that are building, three bricklayers building a church. Asks the first guy, what are you doing? He says, I'm laying a brick. He asks the second guy, what are you doing? He said, I'm building a cathedral. And then he asked the third guy, what are you building? And he said, I'm building the house of God. And I love that parable because it's like everyone nowadays is the first guy. just
Yeah.
laying the brick, just doing it to punch in a wage, to get the job done, to make some developer a bunch of money. And but back then it was the third guy, right? Like building from this like divine place of like I want to create something beautiful that will last through millennia, which is what the Egyptians did, the Romans, everything from the craft that they put into the build and the materials too. Like you said, Roman concrete. Roman concrete was built from volcanic ash from Mount Vesuvio and seawater, and they baked it in these kilns underground. And that process, that craft, people don't know how to do that formula anymore. That's why you see Roman roads that are still and buildings that are still there now. It's
Well,
'cause they,
Matteo, maybe you know about this. I heard, and correct me if I'm butchering this, if you know what I'm talking about. Apparently, I think it was Roman concrete or along those lines, where if there was any kind of cracks, it was self-repairing somehow.
Yeah.
Have you heard that? Like, I think it would rain and then somehow it just kind of the moisture would seal up the cracks on its own.
exactly. It's similar to like the polymeric sand that we have now, right? When you're filling in, pavers or whatever it might be. They had that same formula, but within that ash, exactly. It would rain and it would expand and just get stronger with time. Versus now you see it. Our road, you drive around Toronto, it's like potholes everywhere. Like,
Yeah, and that's the thing too, right? How many buildings, how fast can we put up as many buildings as we can for the least amount of money, right? And just
yeah.
that's
And
it. Throw a bunch of bodies at it.
And I
Yeah.
think it's because of our architecture and the world that we've built is why we're so disconnected. You know, like we're all stuck in these boxes in the sky. Completely.
And that's a
disconnected.
great point too. You drive around the city. So just last summer I was in Boston and I was absolutely blown away. I'm just like so naive and ignorant. I had no idea that Boston was like this absolute gem in the United States, right? I thought it was just like I always thought of it like another Buffalo or whatever. And I went there and I was blown away because everything was just granite, cobblestone, limestone everywhere. And it's like I'm just like blown away by the architecture in the city. And then you come back to Toronto and I'm looking at concrete, asphalt, and stucco every single corner I turn, right? And you can really get a feel for the disconnection just by driving through the town. Like I feel it now when you come back from vacation, you drive from Pearson home, you feel this like negative energy and it's just from the city, as where you go to Europe and it's a completely different feeling because you can actually feel the love and the passion and the care that people took and put into these buildings, which were just like gone completely away from.
And the structure of the towns with piazzas and town centers and using sacred geometry and architectural practices that now it's yeah, in Toronto
Check
it's you get that feeling.
check this out. So like back to that. So Roman concrete had self-healing properties the Romans may have not fully understood. Recent research has shown that ancient Roman concrete known as opus camictium, whatever, contained a key ingredient, lime clast. These lime clasts played a crucial role in the self-repairing of ability. So when cracks formed in Roman concrete, rainwater or moisture would seep in, dissolving the lime clasts. This process triggered a reaction that produced calcium-rich solutions, which then recrystallized as calcium carbonate, effectively filling the cracks. They mixed volcanic ash with lime and seawater, creating a chemical reaction that strengthened the concrete over time. Even centuries later, the presence of water would reactivate this process, reinforcing the material.
Isn't that incredible?
That's so. Look. So Roman structures like the Pantheon, Colosseum, and aqueducts have endured for over 2,000 years, unlike modern concrete, which typically lasts 50 to 100 years. And this is it. So modern engineers are studying Roman concrete to create longer lasting self-heal. So it doesn't even seem like they even know how to
They still don't
replicate
know
that.
exactly how they created
That's
that.
wild.
Like they
Yeah.
have an idea of how they did it, but they still like Matteo said, they still don't have the formula. And just going back to just craftsmanship just in general, like what would you guys say in our modern day that we all as humans can look at? Anything that was built. I only have one thing that's on my mind. That the one thing that was built, and it wasn't even started in our generation, but like one thing that was just freshly finished. I don't even think they're fully finished, but what would you say is like something that we can look at as modern humans and just be like, you see that? That's fucking craftsmanship. Name me a building. Any of you guys around the world.
Modern?
Yeah, like the most modern.
That one in Barcelona.
That's the one. That's the only one. The Sagrada de Familia. Yeah, the Basilica Sagrada de Familia.
Yeah.
That's the last building. And remember, I think that was started
Is
in
that
like,
the one you had in mind too?
yeah, that's the last one. I think they started in like 17 or 1800s. They started that building. And that's like the last building I can think of around the world where you can literally look at it and just be like, that is not built for money. That is not built for, that is built for fucking like, just humankind, like something that's going to stand the test of time, where they're going to look at this in 300, 500, 1,000 years and be like, fuck, look at what they built. Tell me what you find in New York, Toronto, any of these modern cities that have gone up like crazy, that we can literally sit back and be like, look at this fucking beautiful piece of architecture. None. There's nothing. There's nothing. Everything we marvel on is ancient. Pyramids.
Yeah, because
right?
the things like this were built out of the love. Like this was no like economic benefit. This was someone like Gaudi who, just loved what he did. He wanted to build this, and whereas, everything else is just for the money, like trying to pump it out, make money.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But getting back to like how we originally stumbled on this topic, right? Like we're looking for skilled trades out there, skilled labor. And to Matteo's point from earlier, it's like, why do like are we going in the right direction, or are we going in the wrong direction? Because even you talk to so many people, and it's not like they're coaching their kids to be like, go become a good mason, go learn how to craft this out of a piece of stone or a piece of rock. You know what I mean? No, they're telling them, go to school, go learn something, right? Go, it's. I think truly, just to touch on your point again, Matteo, I truly feel like we are going backwards in terms of skill. We are not progressing in skill. We are progressing in I would say, engineering feats. Again,
just sheer outputs, right?
That's it. Pumping out. Well, like again, like you look at the Burj Khalifa, you look at like some of these like, massive tall buildings that have gone up. Don't get me wrong. That's an engineering marvel. You see what I'm saying? But that's not a craftsmanship marvel.
Exactly. And I think like what, to wrap up the whole conversation, it's like, what's going to move us forward? What's going to bring, this craftsmanship back to life? And I think that it's not AI, it's not just AI, it's not just technology, it's not just a movement, it's the combination of these two things. It's working with the modern technology of the time, but also bringing through a movement, inspiring people in their hearts to want to build. And I think that this is a much longer conversation to have about how we do that. But I think it's these types of chats that we're having right now. It's one person at a time to join on this cohesive vision for the future. And then we'll, little by little, we'll change the industry in our lifetime or the next.
100.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Well, I feel like we're just getting started on this chat, and I know you have to wrap, Matteo. We should probably do a part 2, because I feel like we're just kind of scratching the surface here. But with that being said, if someone wanted to reach out, learn more about you, where's the best place they can find you?
Yeah, so you can check out our website. It's ubildapp.com, ubildapp.com. Go through there. If you click get started, I'll reach out to you directly. We can have a chat.
Awesome. All right, Matteo, man, I appreciate you coming on. We will definitely do this again, and all the best.
Nice. Yeah, it was a great chat. Let's run it back for sure. We could go on for another.
100%.
Yeah, part 2 for
we
sure. Part 2. Everybody check out UBild. We definitely will, Charlie. And Matteo, keep up the good work, man. Love the chat, and love to see you on part 2.
Thanks, guys. We'll talk soon. Have a great day.
Thanks.
All right, take care.
Ciao.
It's such a mind fuck when you think of that though. I don't think we're going down the right road or the wrong road because people can make arguments for both, right? I think we're going down a road. It's just it is
And
what
the
it
road
is.
is still being paved. It's not even paved
It
yet. Like
is, yeah.
we're going through it now, and it's like no one knows like where it's going, like where it takes us. It could, could be
But what I
great, could
mean,
be
like
terrible.
if you left it up to me, right? I would say I'd rather go back to, like I would be, live like the Romans or like old school
Yeah,
where
me
it's like,
too.
hunter gatherer or whatever.
Yeah,
Because I just think there's something very special about that. You're bartering with people. There's more of a sense of community. But with that being said, I'm very curious to check out Europe and certain parts of Europe where, I hear that stuff still goes on, right? So it might just be where we are geographically.
I look. I think we're all right in saying that. Are we going down the right road? Are we not going down the right road? I would say that's kind of hard to say because look, we've never had like mankind we've never had things more accessible. No matter where you are in the world, you have food, right? You have medicine. Everything's at your fingertips. Things can be shared across you can talk to family across the world as if they're down the street. So there's a lot of good things that we have innovated. And we hear this all the time. There's no better time to be alive than now, right? But when it comes from a skill set in construction, that's where I would say we've lost. I feel like that's a part that we're not progressing in. Now, we're definitely progressing in the safety aspect, in more of the engineering side, where we're building things safer. We understand, if somebody, if they're in an earthquake prone area, we're building the building or the structure to withstand certain things. I know Japan, for example, because of the tsunamis that they get, like the infrastructure that they put underneath the roads to handle that, like 100%. Like that's definitely an advancement. But what I would say is strictly on the basis of hand craftsmanship, we're going back.
But John, in a world like you're talking about, right? Like where there's a big lack of skill, it also creates opportunity for those people that understand that will shine in their trades, right? Like there's going to be the opportunistic people that see like, fuck, look, every plumber in the city is absolute garbage. Right now, I'm going to shine and I can actually get more money and make more because I'm worth more now because of that, right? Like, so I think you're always like, it's always going to be like a teeter totter effect where it's like it gets really, really bad, but then the people come back and bring it back as much as they can because there's opportunity there, right?
No, and you're right to a certain extent, Charlie. But in a capital like market, right? The market is not there for it. See what I'm saying? That's why they're not building the buildings where you're going to require these craftsmanship on the outside, like on the design of it. You know
Yeah,
what
in
I
that
mean?
sense, like that's why you have the city that you have now,
Yeah,
right? Just
and
because it
yeah, and
doesn't
that's right.
require as much skill, and they're just building at just a rapid pace, and
That's what
they're
I'm
not
saying.
able.
They're
They don't
talking
have
about.
these skilled guys.
Yeah, like when we were going down the on one of our last episodes when we were talking about AI, they're building basically parts of the houses or the building inside a shop and then delivering it and just like tacking it on. You know what I mean? So most of the structure is built. It's just like a jigsaw puzzle where they're putting it together. That to me is not that's not craftsmanship. That's like ingenuity where it's like, okay, like let's think about this, work smarter not harder, which 100%, that's like an advancement, I would say. But show me a bricklayer, right? And I always come back to the stonework because when you look back at the ancient civilizations, show me a stonemason, right? And I'm not saying they don't exist, but they're very, very few and far between. Show me a stonemason that can take a stone and carve, a god into it, right? And put an archway. They don't exist. You know what I mean? And again, if they do, they're very few, far in between, right? Because something like that is kind of like, I don't want to say it's generational, but it is like something leads them on that path where it's like, I want to learn this and I want to be the best at this craft.
So why is that, right? Like you talk about like, and I agree, like things are going downhill. There's no skill anymore. And so like really unpack that, right? Why is that? So the way I look at this is, first of all, there's no incentive for it, like on a economic monetary level, right? And what I mean by that is basically the monetary system. So if you go back to when money was actually worth something, like gold, right? Before the 70s, every dollar was backed by gold. So now if I'm a builder and I have accumulated wealth and savings, investments that, are backed by something tangible and real, I'm going to, when I'm building something, I'm going to part ways with my money that's actually valuable, like gold. It's got to be put towards something that's gonna actually be meaningful and like last long. So like I'm gonna take a lot more care into whatever it is I'm investing in, because my money's actually worth something. Compared to today, our money's truly worthless. Like it's debt. Like I can spray money without any care because like there's no tangible value to money anymore. So like the incentive from the monetary level has totally diminished, right? So this gets a little deeper, but I think it really stems from the monetary system. Like if you really want to like go into the roots,
Yeah,
as to why.
there's no incentive in putting in a bunch of money to build something beautiful when you're not going to get the return for it, right? Unless it's a
Yeah, so
passive
you're
project. Why would you do
incentivized
it?
to go the cheapest, fastest
Absolutely.
way, right? Like
I'm
that's
gonna
just
I'm
what
gonna
it comes
build
down to.
the cheapest, fastest building and pack as many people as I can into
Yeah.
it, right? And
Yeah,
collect
but
as
think
much
about
rent.
if that money was like actually real, where like you're not gonna choose the fastest and the cheapest. You're gonna choose like the quality route because you're parting way with like something real to build that.
I think what you guys are saying um, definitely adds to why there's no more skill, or the skill is definitely not the same as it was 100, 200, and obviously before that, in construction. I want to say where I think a big part of it, and yes, the monetary system, 1,000%, because back in the day when these people used to build, right? Again, you go back to the ancient Romans, Egyptians, Greeks, Spaniards, any ancient civilization, they were building to leave a legacy, right? It had nothing to do with making a return on investment, right? Where I find today, I would say in terms of skill, I would say it's because we lean a lot more on technology, and this is where AI in construction, I would say like UBild, it's amazing. They're using AI to sift through research. You see what I'm saying? To sift through reading material to ensure that the candidates are top quality, right? That is something that AI 1,000%. Where I'm skeptical that AI will improve everything is because without AI, we've already leaned heavily on technology, right? The holes we drill, right? Down to even when we had Steve on the podcast, right? Down to this micro, you know, chip that he throws inside the concrete. You know what I mean? Everything is done to speed up the process, but also fully immersing yourself in the technology that you're leaning on the technology to build this thing. When back in the day, there was no technology to build it. So that stone that you laid, your craftsmanship, your knowledge, your know-how, that's what put that block level. You know what I mean? That's what held up that archway. You get what I'm saying? There was no AutoCAD drawings. There was no structural engineer to tell you that it was good. There was no mechanical engineer telling you, yes, you can put this pipe here, or it has to be of this size. Everybody had you had to, right? Where now I feel like technology has literally, in terms of, and I want to be clear, in terms of craftsmanship, right? In construction, right? Let's be very definitive on what we're talking about. That's where I find we're going backwards, because we've leaned on technology so much to a point where as long as the program says it's okay, you know what I mean? As long as it's the cheapest way and I get the most return on investment, that's the direction we're going in. And in order to do that, right, that means that you're going to take all the skill or a bunch of the skill out of the trades, right? Because you no longer need it. I don't need you to carve these stones by hand. I'm going to send this to this company and they're going to laser it with the CNC machine, bring it to site, lay the brick. That's all you have to do, lay the brick.
You know,
Yeah. No.
you know what's funny? I look at guys like us, right? So this whole conversation we're having about AI and, you know, how we miss the human connection and we think we may be going in the wrong direction. But if you ask anybody that was born in the 2000s, they would probably have a completely different outlook, just because we lived the first half of our lives in a completely different time. And this is why we're so passionate about these things and we're so vocal about it, is because we know how it was before the iPhone, where as someone who was born in 2005 or whatever, 2000, this is all they know. So they're looking at it like, what are you talking about? Like, there's human connection. Like, this is their normal, right? And it's not a negative thing, where, I don't know. So anyways, my point is that I'm starting to feel like the old guy, you know, like our parents, you know, used to make fun of our music and tell us our music is shit. And we used to say the same thing about their music, right? I feel like we've become those old guys where like these kids are going to look at us and say, shut up, old man. You don't know what you're talking about. AI is great, right? We have plenty of human connection, right? So it's like, are we just becoming these old guys, or is there a valid point here?
Yeah.
I would say,
Man, it's
Like, you know, the point is times change, right?
no, but
Like,
I would say,
you
sorry,
can't do anything
Charlie.
about it sometimes.
Charlie, but I would say you're right on a lot of points there, that we are becoming those people that, you know, your music shit. What are you listening to? You guys don't know music. You guys don't know how to party. Back in my days, you know, like we are becoming those guys. But the reality is something that I don't think anybody can argue is, again, getting back to that same question that I asked Matteo and all you guys. Give me a building in the last 200 years that was built around the world that you can literally look at it and be like, holy fuck, look.
No, I know, but this is where this is my point exactly. So look, so now the counter to that, somebody will come and say, yeah, but we had 5 million people come into this country in the last 8 years, right? And we needed to house all those people. If we did it your way, these people would be living on the street, right? We wouldn't have been able to house them.
Okay.
Right.
Well, again, if
So
you just go back,
what I'm saying is, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong,
Yeah.
right? If anything, I lean more towards like, I want less people. I want beautiful things. I want
no,
to,
but it doesn't even have to do with less people. It doesn't, because you look back at even, you know, let's go back to Alexander the Great. You know, even when he went through from, you know, Greece to Egypt, and everywhere he went, they built these fucking, you know, incredible buildings. The Romans, the same thing, you know, even all the way to I believe Iraq, right? They were building these Roman temples, you know what I mean? That were just crafts. It was like craftsmanship, right? That wasn't their country. Yes, they conquered it, right? A whole other, you know, population of, you know, people that didn't even speak their language, and they still put up these buildings that would stand the test of time, right? I don't think it has anything to do with the people. I think it's what Kosta said. It comes back to the monetary system. Nobody is building anything without a return on investment. Think about even people building their dream house. How many times, Charlie, and you know this, right? Like, we've been through this, right? Like, we've helped people build their dream homes, 12,000 square feet, 10,000, 15,000 square feet. They'll look at something, they have like a wish list, a dream list. But then they'll look at it and they'll say, you know what, I'm not going to spend this because if I sell this house, I'm not going to get my money back for putting, 3,000 linear feet of in-floor heating. You know what I mean? Like just using that as an example. Everything's about a return on investment, where I feel like back in the day when they built, these people that, like what they can do with their hands was like unthinkable. They weren't doing it with the intent of what's my return on investment. They were doing it in a sense where it's like, when I die and you look at this building, I put that there. You see what I'm saying? Like there was a difference of pride, of passion, right? It's exactly like that story that Matteo was just saying, right? The first bricklayer, I'm laying a brick. The second bricklayer, I'm building a cathedral. The third bricklayer, I'm building a house of God, right? And it's very true, right? How many, like again, getting back to the union, Charlie, how many plumbers, and I remember from the shack in the morning all the way to the end of the day. The second we left the shack, everybody couldn't wait to go home. You know what I mean? Like nobody wanted to fucking be there. You're in a concrete jungle. That's what it was. Like, you remember putting up these towers? You used to come into the hallway, there was no windows, no doors. All it was concrete, right? If you drywalled a couple of the openings, you wouldn't even know where you were because everything looks the same. It's literally concrete walls.
That's why, like, I just keep coming back to, like, the core of it is we live in a society right now, which is a debt-based system where everyone has what's called a high time preference, which means we all prioritize like immediate return, immediate gratification over long-term benefits, because there's no incentive for us, people or companies, to save anymore, because that savings in 10 years is worthless. Like, our money's getting debased. So we live in this high time preference. Again, back in the day when money was real, you have a low time preference, a total opposite, where people prioritize long-term savings over short-term gains. So, like, think about it, right? You imagine your money was real. So, and you're buying like a tool, like whatever, like a hammer, let's just say. Are you gonna part ways with your real money to buy like the cheap hammer that's gonna break in like a month? Or are you gonna take your time to invest in like the best hammer possible that it's gonna last you a long time? You're gonna choose the latter, because you don't want to part ways with your real money to buy that shitty hammer. So if we lived in a world like this, there really wouldn't even be any shitty hammers or shitty materials on the market, because no one's going to buy them. No one's going to part ways with their savings to buy that. So that would just like increase the quality of everything in the entire like world, really.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I just always get like this conversation has really sparked like a deeper like question, in my mind, where it's just like, again, I keep going back to the way we used to build and the craftsmanship behind it compared to today. Like, we've been to Europe a bunch of times. I can't tell you how many buildings I've walked into that made the hairs on my arms like stand up, right? I even remember, Kosta, I was talking to you when I was I can't remember where I was, but I remember like calling you, and it's like, man, I believe it was Portugal. When I came out of like this one building, it's like, man, you got to check it out. Like, dude, like the hairs on my arms stood up. Like, it was like just something to see, like to a point where it's like, how is this even possible? Right? Give me one building, just one in North America, right? Including the US, where you walked in and you felt the same. You can't even name me one. That's what it comes down to. Look at what Charlie said. Charlie was in Boston, right? Limestone roads, right? Like the buildings were done in limestone. Like, beautiful city. But you can't tell me that the craftsmanship that went into that building is the same as what you see in the ancient times. There's no way, right? You look at, you know, even one, if you want to pull it up, Kosta, Petra in Jordan. You know what I mean? They literally crafted a building from one rock, pillars, you know, statues, archways, doorways, walkways, right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like, yeah, it's like, this is from a rock, man. Like, can you imagine walking up to this and it's like, okay, we got to start chiseling. You know what I mean? Like, I'm telling you, you would have to go around the world today. In today's day and age, no one country would have enough skilled labor to build this. You would literally have to bring in skilled labor from all over the world in order to construct something like this today.
Yeah, 100%. All right, boys, this was a good one. Anything else?
No, I just hope
Sure,
I hope the listeners really like this one, because we went in deep on this one.
No, it was a good conversation and definitely something to think about moving forward.
For sure. All right, boys. Yeah, just to wrap, again, if you're a contractor listening, you want to simplify the way you manage your business, do check out jobtable.com, sign up for a 14-day free trial, save hours per week like thousands of other contractors across Canada and the US, and check it out. Boys, until next week.
Until next week.
Pleasure, guys. Ciao.
Bye.